What do you feel are the most important skills in the workplace, if you're a psychologist, or indeed in most professions? Empathy, leadership, mathematics, vocabulary? Well, I'd argue the most important skill is to be able to write effectively. People who can write effectively tend to flourish in the workplace. They write better CVs, job applications, proposals, speeches, memos, and so forth. They write quickly and persuasively. Now, to become a great writer, you need to learn how to organise your arguments in a logical, cohesive order, construct suitable paragraphs, write precisely, that is, devoid of hazy or ambiguous phrases, write concisely, that is, devoid of unnecessary words, phrases or sentences, and write simply so that people can really understand your work. To develop these capacities, you need to learn and practice hundreds of writing principles. But you do not need to remember all these principles. Some of these principles become natural after a while. Now, I'm going to illustrate some of the principles with the article I've attached here. That is, our task is to uncover problems in this article, redress these problems, and generate conclusions from these examples. Let us first skim the first paragraph under the abstract. Can you identify any problems in these two sentences? Perhaps pause the video to read these sentences. First, towards the end of the first sentence, the word it is ambiguous. The word it or its could refer to the resume, the application process, or quite a number of other nouns. Indeed, as a general rule, I recommend you avoid the word it or its altogether. Not only is this word often ambiguous, but often phrases with this word are unnecessary, they're too long or too vague. So avoid the word it. Second, in the second sentence of this paragraph, the phrase in order is redundant. Indeed, the phrase is always redundant. That is, you can always remove the words in order without diminishing the clarity of this sentence. Third, you should reserve quotation marks for actual quotes, not just informal words like market. If this word is informal or hazy, just use a more precise term instead. Fourth, who is oneself in this sentence? Perhaps this part of the sentence could read something like, to help job applicants promote themselves. That would be clearer. Now read the next paragraph, beginning with, because the resume. This paragraph could also be more precise, concise, and professional. For example, the phrase, in other words, implies the paragraph could be more succinct. You should never repeat yourself with, in other words. That is, you should always write the argument as precisely as you can immediately. You shouldn't need more words or in other words. In addition, the word others could be more precise. Does the researcher mean other people, other trees, other crocodiles? Although we can guess what the researcher intended, a more specific phrase such as other people or other stakeholders facilitates understanding and thus tends to improve credibility. Furthermore, the end of this paragraph comprises many brackets. Don't use too many brackets. If the contents in brackets are important, include this material in the text, perhaps surrounded by commas or large dashes. If the contents in brackets are not important, these words should be excluded. Now continue to the paragraph under the heading Self-Monitoring. This paragraph also contains a few issues. For example, the he/she on the fourth line is really quite a clumsy expression. Now, interestingly, if the sentence revolved around these people instead of this person, in other words, was plural rather than singular, this problem would be avoided. The writer could use the pronoun they instead of he/she. So often use the plural rather than singular form in your sentences. These illustrations were intended to demonstrate just a few goals of writing. That is, first you should write as concisely as possible, partly because you'll often be assigned a word limit, and you want to include as many important but solid arguments as possible within this word limit. But in addition, unnecessary phrases tend to dilute the impact of strong arguments as well. Second, you should write as precisely as possible. Writing that is slightly hazy doesn't seem as credible. Anything that people can't understand very quickly seems sort of unfamiliar and is therefore judged with more suspicion. Third, you need to comply with the conventions of your profession to show you belong. If you breach these conventions, you're sort of unconsciously perceived as almost like an outsider, and readers don't tend to trust outsiders.